Hey, it's me again, Philip. I wanted to share some interesting little experiment here. You may recognize this from Snapchat. They have a couple of really fascinating cameras, and one of them has basically, I would say it's smoking hot. You got some smoke coming out of your eyes, and so I wanted to actually see if we can use that to turn it into an asset. Some smoking, volcano, or some, I don't know, something that might be needing some animated smoke. So let's see how we would do that. First of all, I'm going to drop it into Anime Studio Pro, which is one of the tools I use to convert it to an image sequence. So that will basically launch Anime Studio Pro and open it at full size, ready to render. We see here on the right side we have just one layer, and we can go straight to rendering this, exporting. Where is it? Here somewhere? I never find it. Come on. Export animation, silly me. Okay, Control E, there's a shortcut, right? So if you do this often enough, just use that. Now here is the animation. Format, we'll do image sequence, PNG, that's great. And we might want to say where to save it, but let's just take the default. And let's see what else. Render at half dimensions. You could do that if you want to test and experiment with it first, and then later go to the full size. Render at half frame rate if you only need every other frames. So there's a couple of other things here to consider. Let's just take the defaults and see where that goes. So this is going to go into a folder where I already have quite a bit of image sequences. I'm going to need to switch to a different location for that. So I'm going to simply put the path right up there. That's where my Snapchat video is, and I'm going to create a folder. Frames, not very inventive today. And so that's the folder where I want these images, and you could give it the same name as the original file. It will do something to add an underscore. Maybe you want an underscore here, and then have a number sequence, right? And .png, I think it will add automatically. So let's see that. And so it'll take a couple of seconds and start rendering each of the frames. There's about 300 there, so maybe I could have made this a little bit faster by scrubbing through that first and identifying, well, which ones do I actually want? Because there's a couple of frames at first I don't care for, and then maybe the whole thing that's good is a little bit too slow. It's actually probably displaying only 1 out of 10 frames here in the preview, so that doesn't mean it's going to take that long, right? It looks like it's taking 1 second per frame, but it may take less. It looks like we're getting close to done here already. And really, this angle here is what I need. This is where I wanted to have the bright smoke against the dark background, so it's relatively easy to lock on that and isolate it. Okay, so that's done. We don't need this anymore. I can close this. And sure enough, we now have the frames, and here they are. So we have rendered this video sequence into an image sequence, which means we can do a whole lot of damage with that. And what I'll do is I'll probably want to isolate a couple of frames. These are probably still good, just from about here maybe. Right, so I'm going to take this one, and the frames before that I really don't care for, so I'm going to delete all those. So I have a clean slate here. Let me get this path, and now over to our beloved Howler. I'm going to load a sequence here, and so here I'm going to simply put that path right in there, and it sees all my image sequences. Now I'm going to take just a few to test it first. The file type is allowing any file. I might want to, in case you have other files there, other types, you may want to say, no, look only for the PNG file, so you don't accidentally grab something else in the mix here. And then let's load this selected, and there they are. So that works. What I'm going to need to do now is select the whole sequence, and let's see how many frames there are and how much memory it's going to take. So first, let's do a load sequence. I'm going to select all from the first all the way to the last, shift click to that so all of them are selected, and then load the selected. and just hope that it's not going to run out of memory. And of course, if you do this on longer sequences or 4K, 2K, full high resolution, you might need to first check how much space does it need in memory. And you can do that when you go to the animation and create a new one. You could say, how much you can say, well, let's try with, 123 frames or with 234. You can see here roughly 500 megabytes. So we can probably go to about 800 even. 888, yep, that's limit exceeded. It's a 32-bit application, so with 2 gigabytes is roughly where the limit is going to be. But here we have no problem with that. Let's see what the dimensions are on the image. From the image menu, you can see the image info, and it's 640 by 1344. And so now the trick is to identify and lock on this part. Now, where I'm holding here, I'm still moving my head, but I want to identify the part where I'm kind of holding still, and then maybe add, crop it out and then add a little bit of motion stabilizer to it. So something like this here. This is no good, just about here. There, I'm going to probably identify a little rectangle here. So let me do a selection mask, selection rectangle with a little bit of margin, just in case we need some extra. There, something like this is what I want. Not this, actually, the opposite of that. Let's do invert the selection, or store it and then invert the stored copy. There, invert it and put that back in. So now we have this thing. And if you need to shift it around, use the control key to shift the selection around a little bit. Well, let's say we want this and crop to that selection. Crop to selection. There. So we now have that sequence. It's a little bit lower resolution than I thought I would have it, but hey, it's just to show the concept. So I'm going to store this animation quick, just in case we mess something up and we want to get back to this. So let's play this at 30 frames a second. It is clearly moving a little bit too much. I need to lock on a portion of my head here, and that's something to keep in mind. If you think you know what you're looking at, but it's still going to need to be stabilized, make sure you have some anchor point or reference point you can actually see in each of the frames, or especially the frames where that matter, right? So here we don't need it yet, but from about here to the very end, I want to have maybe this part here around my hair, or my eyelids are here, so my hair is over here. I can probably lock onto that. Let's try that. So this part is the end. I need to delete that, so I'm gonna put the end, and then here go to the first frame, the beginning. That selection here I don't need, or that image sequence, so I'm gonna cut this block or delete this block. And so we have now the sequence that's somewhat usable, but still needs a little bit of stabilizing. So I'm going to try to stabilize that. Let's go store this just in case we need to get back to it, because we'll probably try that a few times. So here it is. This one we might do without. So here is the stabilizer. So we need to go to the animation, the filter, animated, stabilizer, motion prediction, not exactly, there, stabilize. Okay, so with the stabilizer, you have typically a center point you're looking for, and then a region in which you're looking for it. So that's called the track point. Let's do a dry run. Let's do a track, set the track point around here in this area. Somewhere, let's say about here. There's a feature there, somewhat recognizable, probably in each of the frames, and that's really what we need. And then I'm going to say the block size I'm looking for needs to be about this much. That's the red zone here. And then the search area is going to be around here. I don't want to give it too much, but that smoke hopefully is not going to interfere. This part here is what we need to look on. There's a couple of other options here. Let's do remove motion or smooth. Let's do remove motion, see if that's going to be good enough. And go. Let's just try that. And so did it actually do that? Did it actually seem to track it? Hard to say. So so let's not second guess it. Let's actually just try it. So here's dry run is checked off, and everything the same. there. So let's see. No, it's still moving. So it did not actually really see that. Maybe it's too close to the edge. Maybe I need something smaller without the noise from this smoke here. All right, so sometimes that's going to be the case. So let's try that again. Animated, stabilize. And so let's set the tracking point around here on this feature and make it a little bit smaller, something like this, but a little bit bigger to search for. It's not moving that far, is it? Oh, I can't go scrub it while I'm in here. Let's do smooth motion and path smoothing. Do a little bit of that, see if that's gonna do better. Repeat, go. Yeah, now it seems to be tracking it. See that? See how that red box is staying on that piece of hair? All right, so let's see if we can do the same with remove motion. Yeah, that should be okay. It's still drifting a little bit, and that might be because of the changes on the cloud, on the smoke here. But if we do this once or twice, we'll probably have it stabilized just fine. So let's go not dry run. Let's go do this. So now let's see when we play it. Yeah, now see, this part here is not moving so much. Now we can probably look for another part that's also kind of stable and not getting too much interference from smoke hitting it. Difficult, but not totally impossible. But let's say we have enough here. So the next thing you want to do is crop out the noise on the side. And that could be again with this rectangular selection. Perhaps see how far it needs to go. Let's say I want to have about this much. This is going to be where my volcano or my fumes are coming out. And this part here, I'm going to perhaps, even this part here I might remove. So let's do a shift right click and drag that out. So the only thing left really is the smoke. Maybe it's not going to be visible exactly where it's coming out of, a crater or a volcano, the top, the cinder cone of a mountain or something like that. So we'll just do that, and maybe here let's scrub through it to see if we have this part is good. We have some margin. That's all good. Okay, a little bit here would be nice to add. Oh well, it's not perfect. I'm going to crop to that image, crop to selection. And then I need to perhaps make sure it's a reasonable dimensions. So when you resample that, make sure it's not an odd number. As you see here, 227. That happens quite a bit if you manually crop or select without checking on the actual dimensions. So one thing I would do is keep it in aspect ratio and then make it like 228. We're very close. By 328. That's a fairly decent number. Or let's see, 320. By 222, yeah, why not? And then at that point, you could even say, well, who cares if it's 220 or 224 or something like that? It's perfectly okay by a few pixels to add a little bit of distortion. Nobody will notice. Now I want to rotate the whole thing. There it is, counterclockwise. There you go. So now I have the whole video smoking this way, and I want the smoke to go the other direction actually. Oh, there's a little bit something. Hold on. Let me clear the selection and see if there's any noise on the edge. Yeah, look at that. There's a couple of pixels at the top. I should probably get rid of those. So maybe crop it a little bit more. Well, either that or you take the frame that doesn't have that issue, load that into, yeah, we'll use that trick here. We'll take a frame that doesn't have that area here at the top, showing a little bit of, see that stuff. We'll go this frame here. We'll take a snapshot, take that, switch to the swap image, put it in there so we have the same dark spots here, dark pixels, switch back to the main. So now as we go through that, right now we will still see towards the end, we saw it a few times there, but if we blend the two together, or if we actually mix just in that area, so we need to select with the rectangle, for example, we'll select just the upper part. There you go. And maybe not that deep because we will be cutting off the smoke here. So let's do just about this much, very little bit. and then we will blend with the filter, combine with the swap. So mix with the swap image. So the image that you actually want in the upper row of just 1 or 2 pixels, we want it coming from the swap, right? If we don't, then as we scrub, let's go actually find an area where it is showing the defect towards the end. It's difficult to see because the marching ants, and we can turn the marching ants off here. Turn show marching ants, turn that off. So now, yeah, there we go. Now we can see it here, right? And we want to get that hidden. So let's use the filter, and the filter has combine with swap, mix with swap. And so as you use that, you can blend it. Here we're not mixing it, here we're 100% mixing it. So we're basically taking the pixels that we had copied to the swap image and replacing them here. And since the whole thing is remaining about the same, it doesn't matter. We can do a soft transition, a smooth, or we can just crop it like that and animate it so it's doing that across each of the frames. Right. So now we can clear the selection and we should be good. Yeah, much better. All right, so now one last thing I want to do is I want that smoke to go to the right. So I'm going to simply flip the image horizontally. There you go, apply to the whole animation. And here we are. We now have an asset that we can use perhaps in some scene where there's some smoking mountains or some volcano or something like that, right? And we can also make it twice as long, right? This one here, let's store this one again. This one is not very long. What is it? About 30 total number of frames. Let's go to the last one. Frame 93. And if we play it at 30 frames per second here, it's going to be about 3 seconds. So at 24 frames per second, maybe 5. Yep, almost, yeah, about 5 seconds. And so if you needed 10 seconds, we'll need to make this go longer. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One thing I would do perhaps is simply right-click here and smooth it. And so it's playing slower and longer, therefore the duration is going to be, let's say, twice as long if we use the time stretch, right? And with the what is it here, 2 times, and so we have 168, something like that. It's just approximate. I mean, we can make it 200 exactly if we want to, and so then that way we know that will last about 10 seconds if we play it at 24 frames a second. Actually, to do that, we probably need 240 frames. 240 frames at 24 frames per second should give us about 10 seconds of duration. Make sure you have the frame blending enabled and rip it. And the image stabilizing we had applied, we're not going to need that anymore, so we can now continue. And so now we have a slower animation here. And let's say we wanted to perhaps go back to not quite that slow. So you can go to time stretch the other direction. Let's say we wanted 150, right? Something like that. And okay, so let's say we keep this as an asset. And of course it's kind of black and white. Maybe not. Maybe we need to do a little bit of conversion to grayscale, something like this. Then maybe also contrast enhancement. Adjust. I might use the curve, for example. So you can work with that to make it a little bit more subtle, a little bit more intense, a little bit more space, looking like it's some space clouds, all sorts of little side effects here depending on how you adjust this. And so you have some complete darkness for some of it. The background up here all around it should be completely dark, but then there are some parts that you may want to have at higher brightness levels, and apply that. Okay, so we have a fairly interesting animation of And so we have this cloud asset that came out of my eyes, so to speak, courtesy of Snapchat. And I want to thank them for creating such interesting, creative cameras and effects. I have no idea if it's legit for me to use this for commercial purposes. I figure I did so much work on it, it's probably mine now, but that's arguable. In California, I think if the pixels are 50% different from the original, it's something that I heard about 20 years ago. Who knows if that's still good? But I'm not selling dog waffle. I'm selling the concept of, hey, quite often in your surroundings you'll find something. This cloud may have come not from Snapchat. Maybe it's you're looking out the window and you see the chimney or a fireplace somewhere, and there is some smoke coming out of the chimney. And you can quite easily do something similar to that, just to create that asset. And then what you do with it is really up to you. So let's see, what do we want to do with that?